Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Summer Hassan, like you guys already know. मेरा नाम समर हसन है और मैं Epiphany की फाउंडर और CEO हूँ और आज हम वापस आ गए हैं with Epiphany Talks. आज का टॉपिक बहुत ज़्यादा क्लोज है to my heart and to a lot of other people as well. हमने वंडर वुमेन इन पाकिस्तान गेमिंग इंडस्ट्री कुछ टाइम पहले किया था तकरीबन जून के अंदर, जिसमें हमने बहुत सारी जो फैंटास्टिक वुमेन हैं जो कि सर्व कर रही हैं गेमिंग इंडस्ट्री के अंदर पाकिस्तान में, उनको हमने हाईलाइट किया था। और आज हमने सोचा कि हम एक इंटरनेशनल पैनल होस्ट करते हैं जिसके अंदर तमाम जो वंडर वुमेन हैं, तमाम तो नहीं ऑब्वियसली, लेकिन चंद वंडर वुमेन ऑफ द गेमिंग इंडस्ट्री, उनको हम इनवाइट करते हैं। तो हमारे पास बहुत ज़्यादा फैंटास्टिक पैनल है। आई वुड एनकरेज ऑल ऑफ यू, इफ यू डोंट हैव टाइम टुडे to log in and watch online, please go ahead and watch the rerun जो कि available है on YouTube and LinkedIn. So please do that. Also, I kind of want to really do a massive shout out for revolving games. So हमने गेमिंग की इंडस्ट्री की तमाम जो एडुटेनमेंट से स्टार्ट किया था इन जून, तकरीबन कोई 20-30 हमने इवेंट्स कर लिए हैं स्पेसिफिकली ऑन गेमिंग इटसेल्फ। और हमारे पास एक अब नए पार्टनर भी हमें हमें ज्वाइन कर लिया रिवॉल्विंग गेम्स ने. So I'm extremely delighted to announce that Revolving Games has joined Epiphany as a partner to assist us in our mission to further gaming industry in Pakistan and around the world as well, and really bring this opportunity for the country and for the region. So without much ado, I'm going to welcome a dear friend, and we've never met, but what do you know, right? This is the COVID world, so virtually we've met multiple times now. So I'm really excited to introduce Kate again. Kate, why don't you do an intro for our audience briefly, and then I'll hand this panel over to you officially.
I will. Thank you very much. It's great to be here again. And hi, everybody, for wherever you are watching from, whatever time it is. I hope you're doing well. So my name is Kate Edwards. I've been in the game industry for over 27 years. And I'm currently the executive director of the Global Game Jam organization, which you've probably heard about the Global Game Jam. It's the world's largest great game creation event. I'm also a geographer, and I've done culturalization consulting in the industry for a long time on a lot of titles you probably recognize, like Halo and Call of Duty and Fable and Age of Empires and all this fun stuff. So yeah, I'm very happy to be here. And this panel is really important because we want to highlight the fact that, even though that the industry is only around 20% women, there are some amazing, remarkable women who are in this industry, who are in leadership roles. And so we want to talk about that, talk about not only the great successes that they've had, but also the challenges that still remain for other women who want to enter this industry. And, how do you overcome those challenges? So on that note, I'd like to introduce our panel. So starting with Maria Oliveira Tommelini, who's the co-founder and CEO of COO, of GameSafer.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Super excited to be here. Should I say a few words about myself?
Sure.
Or should I wait till you introduce others?
Well, how about we wait and we'll do the full introduction rounds. I'd also like to introduce Rebecca Langawa, who's the founder and president of Happy Warrior.
Hi guys, so great to be here. Thank you for including me on this amazing panel.
Hi, and welcome aboard. And then also Veronica Zamedo, who's a UX strategist and research leader, and she's also a consultant and a keynote speaker.
Hello, everyone.
And sadly, Celine could not be with us today because she is sick, not feeling well. So we will miss her voice today. So yeah, let's kind of hop in with introductions. So it'd be great to not only just besides a basic introduction of what you do, but also if you could just spend a few minutes, like just a couple minutes or so, detailing the short story of how you got into the game industry and what did your path look like. I think a lot of people would be really interested to hear that because the path into the game industry it tends to be different for almost every person I know. So how about Maria, we start with you.
Okay. So my background is in social impact. I founded my first company in my early 20s, and I was supporting large corporations to invest in programs that were developing the UN goals, Sustainable Development Goals. And I did that for many, many years. And in a personal side, I've been always a gamer and I have kids that are gamers. So since I moved to Silicon Valley a couple of years ago, I started to engage more and more with technology and how technology could, serve society for good. And then my co-founder was working in the gaming industry. We were having many conversations about how we could drive, more impact to this industry. And then we had this idea to use technology to prevent a couple of challenges we have inside games, such as harassment, bullying, fake accounts, bots, and so on. And then we created Gamer Safer to tackle those problems. So we are basically driving online safety, more positive and fair play experience to millions of players using technology.
Excellent. Thank you. How about Rebecca?
Hi. So I started my career in digital advertising and marketing over 20 years ago, and was really focused. We had our agency kind of split into different segments of traditional corporate clients, and we also worked with a lot of sports and entertainment clients. So really early in my career, when I was when I was still 19 years old, I was working with a lot of sports and entertainment clients in the space. And from there, I was able to go in-house working with one of those clients, the Minnesota Timberwolves and Lynx, an NBA and WNBA team, as their brand manager. I learned so much about sports technology and emerging technology because we were just growing along with the immersion of sports tech. And when I left there, I started working directly with players to help them increase their brand awareness, grow social when social media was really emerging and blowing up, and players were really focused on building out that personal brand and utilizing that to help them really increase and secure some brand partnerships and awareness of who they were. So since then, I've been working as a consultant within the sports technology and esports technology landscape. And that really bleeds through a lot of different industries, from investment to startups, working with a number of pro teams, working directly with talent, and then helping brands that aren't familiar with the esports ecosystem really navigate that and figure out what's going to make sense to them from a digital marketing perspective that they can really track and own.
That's awesome. Thank you. And then how about Veronica?
Well, in my case, I've been in the video game world for more than 15 years. I'm currently a UX strategy consultant. That means that I help companies to elevate their user experience practice. So I touched on things within a company, from processes, staff, company culture, on top of understanding players and improving the game in itself. Before being a consultant, I was at Electronic Arts for almost a decade, where I started the UX research discipline, and I was a director of UX research by the time I left. And that's something actually I'm pretty proud of, that achievement of building a team and a practice that was, in just starting. Words like UX didn't really were used at the time. I'm building a team from the 2 that we were at the beginning to more than 40 people all across 8 locations in 3 continents, and I'm working on the whole portfolio with amazing games like Battlefield, FIFA, PvZ. That's something that's very dear to my heart, like transforming how we work and what we can achieve. And maybe that's also related to my background is in psychology, and then in interactive arts and human-computer interaction. Further background, also worked with small indie studios back in the day. And I'm originally from Argentina, but Canada has been home for a third of my life.
That's great. That's really cool. So amazing. So it's like so much, there's so much talent just right here. So let's just kind of hop into the idea of the numbers that we're talking about. I mentioned in the intro that the game industry tends to trend around 20% women on average from place to place. Certainly it's more in some places and less in others. So we know, though, for a fact that there are about as many women who play games out there in the public, in the gaming community, as men, which is something that even a lot of the public don't know. because they don't see the numbers or they don't care. When I often will tell somebody that there's more women who are 30 or 40 years old playing games than teen males, they think I'm crazy, and they can't believe it, because it goes against the public narrative. But we also know, unfortunately, that there's only about 20% women who work on the industry side, across from locale to locale. So what do you think are the causes of this off-balance ratio? We have so many women who play games, but we don't have as many actually making them. So what do you think are some of the root causes of that?
I'll jump in.
Yeah, feel free.
Okay. Go ahead, Veronica.
So definitely better awareness of how many different disciplines play a role in the game development. I think that there's a lack of that right now. There is still a lot of the focus on primary roles. And I think that if we can help to open to what's involved in the making of games broadly, it can open a full spectrum of different skill sets and professionals that actually make the mix. Bias, research, but marketing, project management, art design. And actually, there has been a great effort to promote STEM subjects to girls, which is great and needs to continue and needs to bring that in the early stages so they can continue that growth. But also making games is more than that. So I actually love that in the last few years, the acronym went from STEM to STEAM, adding the arts to the science, technology, engineering, and math. And I think that really hints to the broader skill sets engagement. And whichever you're passionate about, now how can fit in game.
Mm.
So some things that I've seen, working in a traditional sports world and moving into gaming and esports, is a lot of times people are being recruited and hired based on existing network and existing relationships. So in a male-dominated industry, you see a lot of kind of boys club hiring, where it's maybe somebody they went to college with or somebody that they're friends with that are kind of coming into the fold. And the culture that exists in terms of community culture, going golfing, hanging out, like going to the bars after work, like those types of activities really make it hard for women to break in and to get noticed. But on the flip side, I think we as women make a very common mistake overall on waiting to be invited to the table instead of really forging our own path and declaring confidence and really pushing our own way into spaces where we might not feel like we're invited, and owning that without apologies, without apologizing for being bold or being loud. I've made many people uncomfortable throughout my career with my ideas and my my inability to play the little good girl role and just be quiet and do all the work behind the scenes, right? I don't want to play that game. You also need champions internally within organizations that are making intentional hires for women and people of color. It has to be done intentionally. And I think, Veronica's right about educating young women about the pathway to these types of careers, and starting in STEM is really important. But I think the industry as a whole has a responsibility to get into schools and to show that these opportunities exist for all students. And we can do a better job, I think, industry-wide. And as women leaders, we can also be intentional to do that, to share those stories. I didn't know that I could have had a career in sports marketing. We didn't really talk about that in high school when I was growing up. We hear about all of these really traditional linear jobs. So being exposed to that just through happenstance of getting an advertising agency job that was working with sports clients, then I was exposed to what I could do within that industry. So those are my thoughts on that. I think confidence is really key, and the more we can build that in our young women, the better the entire industry is going to be in the future.
Yeah, I just want to share from where I stand now as an entrepreneur that is really hard to get in all those conversations with investors, with the industry, and be one of the few talking about things. Sometimes it's really weird. It's a weird sensation. So I think we need to open more spaces for women to become founders as well. I was even talking with Kate before the panel that I would love to have more data to see how many women are serving the industry, are creating games, and I couldn't find like a source to provide that. So I think that that is an important thing to know and to have, because with more women creating games, there will open more space for women joining games, and that is an important thing for us as an ecosystem. Another thing that is like I'm learning as I go in the process of interviewing people to join Gamer Safer, to support our cause, there are many layers in those conversations that I am super curious to dig more, such as like I never worked in games, so I decided not to apply, or I'm not a gamer, so would I be a good fit for this position? So we have all these concepts in our heads that somehow limit us. So we need to be more open to people that are also not from the industry, that are not also gamers, because it's also a way to captivating more people to what we do, to create more, to engage. So those are the two examples. So I think more role models in terms of creating companies, and also being open, in every single opportunity. So Veronica and Rebecca were mentioning about the leaky pipeline. So that's a great analogy with the tech industry. So we don't have as many women starting careers in STEAM and not progressing in that career. So as a consequence, we have less women founding companies as well, and that creates a bad cycle for us. So watching all those steps and having like more people aware of that, mainly those with influence, to change, because we need people with privilege, with power and influence to make a huge change in this space. And that won't happen if we don't also join the panels with them. So I really like the idea. We are here, we are discussing, this is super important, but we need more and more women join the open discussions about games and in general.
I totally agree, Maria. I think that's right on point. Having conversations like this is important, but ensuring that we're really integrated in a larger conversation with men is also absolutely paramount. And I do want to say I'm not a gamer. Like I don't play video. I have not really played video games since like Tetris first came out in the 80s. Like I don't, but I also worked in the NBA and I'm not a basketball player. So I think that's a really important thing for young people to understand. You can have awareness and knowledge from a business perspective within an industry vertical without being, an athlete or talent within that space. There's so many layers to this robust industry that are just really ripe for disruption. And when I put all of my emphasis in working in esports and going kind of away from traditional sports, I just decided. There wasn't a job opening. No one was telling me you should do this. I just decided it's where I wanted to be, and I made it my narrative. And I think that so often we wait when we can just move and act, So I want more women to feel empowered to declare where they are in the space that they want to be and just move boldly. People will believe you. Like people buy in. They're all about it when you move forward in confidence.
So many great points. I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't even know where to start with with follow up. But you're all making fantastic points, and I think part of what you're speaking to is just the need for visibility and a certain bold visibility. You know, not being afraid to basically just pick a direction and go. You know, I mean, I often tell people because I mentor a lot of students, and a lot of people starting out in the industry, and I tell them, you know, if I, as a geographer, can find a way to work in the game industry for as long as I have, anybody can. I mean, you know, it's just, and I am a gamer. I like playing games, and I was playing games before I came into the industry, but I never aspired to work in the industry. And it wasn't until this was in the context of working at Microsoft way back when I realized that the skills that I had actually could help people who are working on games. And that's when I was like, well, if that's the case, I'm going to gravitate and kind of push myself. And just like you said, Rebecca, basically assert myself into that space and try and kind of stake my claim and have a voice. And I think having that uniqueness is so important. I once worked for a manager who her whole aspiration was to become a VP at the company. And so what she was trying to do, however, kind of the antithesis of what you all were suggesting, is she was trying to be as male-like as possible. So like she was taking up golf so that she could hang out with the guys and go golfing, even though she hated golfing. She really just didn't like it, but she was trying to learn it anyway, just because she felt that was the only way to fit in, you know? And it's like, it makes me sad when I think about that story, because she didn't see that there's other ways to basically, you know, to try and assert her presence into that conversation. But moving on from the great points that you made. So I think we have a sense of what we as individuals can do and what we need to do, you know, and finding those role models that we can follow and finding great examples of visibility. And you know, we all, you know, we can talk for hours about imposter syndrome and how everyone deals with that. That is, you know, if you're feeling imposter syndrome, you're not alone. But I want to also talk, though, about on the company's side, you know, especially in the last few years, we've seen a lot more companies wake up to the whole DEI, the diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts going on. So what do you think needs to happen on the company side as well? Because, you know, we hear a lot of stories about certain company cultures, and you wonder, like, why would any women work there? But I'm kind of curious about your ideas about what should happen on the company side if they want to attract women as talent, and especially into leadership roles. What do you think they should be doing compared to what they're doing now?
So you alluded, you know, spot on all the diversity and inclusion efforts that are going on. And among those, I really like one regarding hiring practices training, particularly towards unconscious bias. I think that, you know, as was mentioned as well with Selena Maria, that we tend to gravitate to our networks or the prototypical roles for the male developer profile. And I think that we are all somewhat slaves to those unconscious biases, and sometimes we didn't even know that we have them. I have to admit that several times I caught myself meeting a new person and, you know, simply another woman, and like pop in my head, like that little voice of, you know, questioning, is she really into gaming or this role? And then, you know, slapping on my own face to like, okay, come on, this is myself too. But I think that it happens a lot, and people just don't realize it's happening, don't know how to deal with that. And better practices on hiring to really look into that skill set that the person bring, to strip down any prejudice or preconceptions that are happening are really important. And actually know how to make us better professionals, which ultimately should be better human beings for all of us. So that's definitely something I love to see more.
Yeah, I would say, you know, so often we put the pressure on each individual staff member to go through these trainings and to think about how to treat one another. But really, it's a systematic problem, and it starts at the top. So even as consumers, when we look at different organizations that we're going to purchase from or be involved with from a service perspective, I think we need to start with taking a look at their board of advisors if they have one. Is it balanced? What's their executive staff like? If the only VPs that are women within a large organization are in HR and marketing, which so often you see, then you're really, I wouldn't want to do business with companies like that. I just don't. I think it's, that's where the change needs to start. I think more boards need to be balanced and more executive staff need to be balanced, because that's the only way that lasting change is going to happen. And so often companies are putting it on their staff to go through a training and they checked a box as leadership to say, well, we did the thing, and oh, well, nobody's applying. Women aren't applying to these jobs, and people of color aren't applying to these jobs. Well, I'm not going to apply to work for a place that is extremely white male dominated. I've worked in organizations that are like that, and they are toxic. It's like everyone's waiting at the end of a meeting for you to pick up their dirty coffee cups, or I've traveled as an executive within a company I was embedded at, and someone who's literally at the exact same level as me in the organization is asking me to set up dinner meetings for him and a prospect. And, it's because from their standpoint, they're so used to women being their assistants, their secretaries, their support staff, that they really have a blind spot and a gap for how they view women as leaders. And so it has to start absolutely at the top of the food chain there. And then it drips down by example and not by, a class that you take or a presentation that you have everybody go to.
I don't know if you had the chance to see the presentation that Trinidad Ermida gave at GDC, but she put it in a very nice way, what I believe. So she said that we should move from low-hanging fruit actions to high-hanging fruit actions. So we all have these programs to support diversity. Some games are investing in social impact causes, but are they looking at the mirror? Are they look to their boards? Are they finding the bad apples and, taking action? So I think that is the missing part in all this process. So of course, low-hanging fruit programs are important and they need to happen. But also we need to drive systemic change, which is something that is important, not only for women, but for the future generations that are coming that won't work in companies that reflect those values, and also players, right? Future players that are joining the games. We need to look at the mirror as an industry and make the change. And that requires a lot of work, and not an easy work, but it needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
I do agree that company culture is ultimately, you have the top down and the bottom up. And I do agree that from the top down, the top is ultimately accountable for how the company is moving and what's going on, and they should be accountable for everything that happens within that, and they should enable healthy cultures that having clear, explicit beliefs and values that actually reinforce where to go. I also think that the bottom up is key and really important, because the actions that happen by what is the vast majority of any workplace shapes the culture, and people also should feel that they have the power to transform that cultural change. So I do like more like that synergy and hold the accountability, but also I think that the bottom up has the power to transform. I should also be accountable to those actions.
Yeah, those are great points. I mean, I think what we've seen, we just in the last couple of years, we've seen some really, open, explicit news stories like at Riot Games, what was going on at Riot with their whole sexism issues in their culture. And a lot of that change was driven from the bottom, from a lot of the people in the company who eventually got visibility around the issues. And of course, they staged a walkout and did other actions to really try and emphasize to management that this is serious. You know, we take this very seriously. And it wasn't just women walking out, which I think was also an important statement. It's, you know, which is sometimes, you know, we talk about male allyship and how important that is. And that's one of those things when we have these conversations around women in games and women in tech and everything. I personally feel it's extremely important to have men in the room, because I know I've been to way too many talks and way too many sessions where it's like women only. It's like, yeah, but we all get it. most all of us already get it. And there is a certain value in having that conversation among ourselves, but there's also, I think, tremendous more value. I mean, the people who are not aware need to know, and that tends to be a lot of the men. And so I think it's really important to have that open conversation. And I, at least in my experience, I've seen more of that allyship developing in a more overt way, you know, where they're much more willing publicly to, you know, within the context of a company, to state their, you know, that, hey, this is wrong, I don't like this either, which I think is great. I think we need to see more of that. But then, like the top-down approach, like Rebecca was mentioning as well, you know, we saw at Ubisoft is what Ubisoft's been going through over the last several months, where they've had this exposure of systemic sexism within the company. And, you know, at the top of the company, basically, he just started clearing house. And so we've seen a lot of people exit Ubisoft in the last few months, you know, because they basically, you know, decided that they're not going to tolerate that behavior. But you have to ask yourself, well, why was it tolerated for so long? You know, so there's a lot of complications around that. We don't need to go into that, but I think it emphasizes that fact that I think it has to be both top down and bottom up. I mean, basically, how does the top come to understand how bad it really is? And then once they understand, then what do they actually do to address the issues? And it's the latter part, I think, which is really where, because obviously the top management has the power structure within the company, so it's on them to actually do something. And I'm encouraged because we're seeing more examples of them knowing that they have to do something, but we also know that it's just there's all kinds of other issues out there. So, you know, so I don't think we need to dwell on the toxicity part, because it's something we all get and we all understand. I think for people wanting to come into this industry, they are aware of it. At least most women I know, you know, who are interested in coming into the game industry, they have some sense of it. And so I think what's really important to just around that topic is going back to what we already said, that, you know, having good role models who were able to show that you can have a successful career and you can overcome those challenges. You don't have to be daunted by them. You don't have to be scared by them. It's just a reality of a part of the reality of this industry. But there's a lot of other super positive things about being in this industry. So, you know, the toxicity and sexism that we hear about doesn't have to, you know, overpower someone's decision to come into this industry, because let's face it, you're gonna deal with that in any industry. It's not just the game industry. So, kind of moving on from that, I'm curious then, you know, when we're talking about having more women in the industry, you know, to what degree do you think that having better gender representation, and frankly, not just gender representation, but ethnic representation, cultural representation, you know, how do you think that contributes to creating a more positive culture in a company, but also in the games that we create? Because obviously that's a whole nother topic about where companies create games that are targeting very specific demographics. For example, they think, for example, that a first-person shooter is going to be mostly just guys playing it, which tends to be true, but that's not exclusively true. I mean, I love playing first-person shooters. I know a lot of women who do, but oftentimes we're not considered when the game is designed. So I'm curious on your thoughts. You know, how does the representation of the company improve these aspects, both for the company and in the content?
You know, from my experience, and I've been really fortunate to work for extremely progressive clients and be a part of really progressive organizations. So, for example, I'm an advisor and mentor for Stadia Ventures, and Stadia is an investment firm in esports technology and sports technology. And being a part of Stadia has been pretty phenomenal in regards to their intentionality when it comes to bringing diverse people from around the world. And I mean, I remember very early on getting an outreach from Tim Hayden there, and it was super raw and transparent to say, we need more women. Like, women in this industry, the best women in this industry. Can you please invite them to come to our next cohort pitch event and let them listen in and see if they want to be a part of this, because they were putting intention behind. So I don't want to just say that every layer of this industry is against growth, and there are companies like that, and the ones that I'm a part of, I choose to be a part of. So there is definitely, when you can move forward in intention, that's where change really starts to happen. When it comes to the game development and even gameplay side, I think that there's a lot of advancement that needs to happen and change. And you're right, it's not just in the gaming industry. I mean, I also like to fish and hunt, and I have a hard time finding hunting gear that fits my body that isn't trying to, it's designed by men because it doesn't fit properly. It's just like a smaller version of the men's gear, but then they just put like pink piping on it and call it for girls. Like, it's stupid. It's like not, really you have to have women in a decision-making ability who are designing for women. What we've seen with Stadia is, as we've grown on the number of people of color from around the world and women from around the world within our cohorts, we have about 250 advisors that come and listen to these startups. We've had more startups. Like, I'm working directly with GamerG out of India right now. It's an Indian founder creating an esports platform. It's so exciting to see the diversity of the startups that apply. So it's a sea of change that happens. When we have women founders come and pitch to us, we know they feel more comfortable now that there's a lot of women that are in the room. And as women, we can raise our hands and say whether or not we actually would use that. And before, completely transparently, when I first started working with Stadia, there weren't a lot of women, and we would have women founders come in, and then the guys would be like, the next day when we're evaluating, they'd be like, well, I talked to my wife. And it's like, well, frankly, your wife is a woman, but she doesn't know anything about sports technology. So let's bring in women that know about sports technology. So they've done a really great job. The other thing I wanted to mention is, you talked about your friend who was trying to golf because she wanted to kind of fit in. And we see that on the gaming side, the esports competitors that are women that really kind of hypermasculate themselves in order to kind of fall under the radar so that they're not targeted. I think that if we can create a very safe, inclusive space for gamers while they're gaming, women will be more inclined to expose themselves even as women. So they're not lobby kicked out or they're not ganged up on and killed early. I mean, those types of things happen to gamers. I hear it from young people who game in their, from their teens into their 20s, that it's harder for them to advance and get really good at a game because they're targeted. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I'd love to hear from Maria about Gamer Safer on how are they impacting a safe place for women in game.
Hey, Rebecca. Yeah, thanks for making that point. Yeah, so what we're trying to do is trying to support gamers since the beginning of their journey. So we verify and authenticate players before they join a match, and with that we're supporting, to prevent fake accounts, bots, smurfing accounts. So if you wanna, for example, have a female-only league, you can have that. Or if you wanna put more girls or female players playing together, you can do that. And by understanding players, we use computer vision and AI to make this process. We are also supporting the industry to improve the way they're matching players inside the game. So with more context, we believe that we can minimize significantly toxicity or disruptive behaviors, as some people call, and also to provide a better experience for players, because once we know more, we have more insights about them, we can provide a better experience, and we anonymize all that information. So we keep anonymity, but we also provide more context to esports platforms and also multiplayer games. That's the whole idea of our technology.
Mm.
So I wanted to also keep building on this diversity from gender, ethnicity, and ultimately when we create games, we're trying to create rich experiences, we're trying to be creative with the product. So this goes a lot with problem solving, and there has been studies that shows that actually a better representation in the group that is making those decisions, products, are actually going to be outperforming other groups where it's more cohesive in their identities, because they bring less experiences to the table. So I think that is very clear in some products, and again, having champions to introducing new modes, new gameplay styles, even including features for representation. There has also been a lot of including female characters, so you're customizing your character so you can also feel identified with that. And that's kind of another aspect that you feel more engaged, or again, playing styles, that is more about variety of people preferences. So the more of those could be part of the game making, you're going to be like tapping in this broader audience who will be more like satisfied with what's there. It's going to be more attractive and more rich, and produce that. So I think that that definitely something that it helps from every single point of view. You can like look at it from a profit number, but you can look at it for like what amazing game you created, which I think is what's in everyone's best heart and interest in my heart to create. And actually, when I was looking into that, I wanted to bring some numbers. I didn't find that many from the game industry, but maybe this one kind of like inspires in terms of what these diversity in groups can bring. So I found a reference to a study from the University of Maryland and Columbia University. So they look at the S&P Composite 500, and they look at the female representation on top management, and they found that had a correlation that increased the value of the firm by 42 million. I'm with that. And there was so Maria, you are increasing your firm value by 42 million. Another one that they also they look more specific in the composition of these board members. So it wasn't just the percentage of the one that I mentioned before, but they look at females on the board. And they found that even having one or two females on the board, it was also highly correlated to higher average of return in equity, lower debt, and better average growth. So it's like, yeah. And the last one that was really interesting, because those two were looking more about this, again, like, SPLG composite, which is a lot of numbers, so big numbers. And they were looking about, okay, but what happens in small groups when you have more variety in just a small group of people? What's the impact of that? So there was a study coming from the Stanford University, collaboration with University of Illinois, on this diversity on small groups, and they put people together in it was 3-person groups, and there was in this case was like all white members, and then the other groups were 2 whites and a non-white member, and they give them an exercise to resolve a murder crime mystery. and they give it information. And the result came from these like 3 group people, that the groups with more racial diversity significantly outperform the groups with no racial diversity. So I was fascinated. I got inspired by this panel to dig more in specifics, to bring those concrete numbers on how this diversity helps. And I think that those are examples that can easily be translated into the game industry. And I would love to see even more studies and now in companies in game industry. And I think that, again, diversity is going to bring that strength on the multiple facets of the game production.
Yeah,
I love that. That's amazing. And it really speaks to the fact of viewing things from a different perspective or a different lens. And when you can bring people together who are looking at a problem, like you said, Veronica, in totally different ways, I think you get to the results a lot quicker. I absolutely love that that research that was done. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think my feeling is that data plays an important part for some people, especially those that are making decisions. So I really like that we can have more and more data supporting diversity teams, right? And I have a couple of personal friends that also became more allies or sponsors of women because they somehow have personal experience with their own daughters, family members. So I believe that change can happen from all these different places, like with data, from the heart, from personal experience. I just want to, share that, because in order to take action, we need to understand the motivations in the other side, and that those triggers, sometimes we action them in a different way. But I think data is such an important point.
Yeah.
But it's not the only one. Some change comes from the heart as well.
Absolutely. I mean, just a couple of points to follow up on all the great comments that you said. I mean, one thing that came to mind is I worked when I was at Microsoft. There was a guy named Jonathan Sposato, and we worked together there. And after after his Microsoft career, he went into investment in sort of the VC realm, and eventually he came out with a book, I think a couple of years ago, called Better Together. And his premise of the book is basically that it was basically showing a path to how men and women especially in the leadership roles, can share the space, and how he was advocating that we need more women in the space because of a lot of the reasons that all of you have cited. And at one point, he kind of made news before he came out with that book, because at one point he declared, as an investor, he said, "I am only from this point forward going to invest in women-owned companies and women-run companies," because he said they actually get stuff done. He said they always get stuff done. He said, "I talked to a lot of the male-run startups, and they kind of give me a bunch of BS and yeah, we'll have this done and we'll have it on target." And he says half the time they don't. Where he said he noticed that every woman-run company that he was interacting with, they always hit their target. Because I think there was a certain level of feeling, and I think we've all felt that there are eyes watching us, and that if we fail, that, oh yeah, they failed because it's a woman running it. There's a kind of this weight of responsibility that we I'm not saying we wouldn't take it seriously, and I'm not saying men don't take it seriously either, but there's an extra weight because we know there's visibility on our success. And I thought in relation to that, just another quick little story about the representation and the power of inclusion. I ran an event a few years ago, and the keynote speaker was Christina Reed. And Christina was the producer on the movie Big Hero 6. So she was working at Disney. And so she worked on Big Hero 6. She also worked on the 2 shorts called Paperman and Feast. And all 3 of those earned an Oscar, which is pretty impressive. And what was really cool is that she, in her keynote talk, described how she attributed that level of success to the process they used to create the content, which was she said when they did like the daily, when they show the daily clips of the animation being produced, she said we would bring every single person in the building into the room, including the security guards and the catering staff and the cleaning staff, everybody. And they basically set out a rule saying everyone has an equal voice in this room. And so they were encouraging people of all backgrounds, all ages, all ethnicities, all genders, to just give us your ideas. You're looking at this, tell us what you see. And she said they got the most amazing ideas from the people you would never expect, and it's just because they chose to listen, and they gave they gave everyone a platform to actually, basically speak their mind without being judged for it. And she attributes that process to why, all three of those projects that she did achieve that level of high success. So, and she said it wasn't hard to do. It was just a matter of just doing it. Just making a decision and saying, this is how we're going to create the content. And I thought that was really cool. And I've heard a lot of other examples of that where it's not rocket science to do this. It's basically a matter of will, of just deciding that you're going to do it. And I'm seeing that a little bit more in the game industry, where especially the people in leadership roles are understanding that they're in leadership roles for a reason, which means they can make decisions. So if they want to decide to, for example, examine whether or not they have a gender wage gap in their company and fix it, they can do that, which has happened to a company I know in Sweden, where they basically just found out they had a wage gap, and the CEO said, we're not going to have a wage gap anymore, and they fixed it. So as we're starting to get closer to the end here, I wanted to ask one last question, which is if you had to pick one piece of advice or a message that you would want to give a woman or other underrepresented person to pursue a game career, what would you tell them? What would you encourage them to do?
I can go first. So I always like to say those things from my own experience. So if you look at my own journey, I am an entrepreneur, I am a mom, I am a Latina, I am an immigrant, I am super loud, vibrant. I was told many times that I was over, and I refused to accept that. I felt intimidated so many times because of my accent, because some aspects of my identities, but I just kept going. And one of the things that really helped me in this process was finding a community that valued my talent and offered those talents to this community. So because I felt excluded so many times, I found inclusion. I found a way of serving others. And that led me to, I can't count the many opportunities that I got from mentoring other women, because I have all this entrepreneurial background, social impact. And then I kind of built something that I wasn't finding out there. And that led me to be here today with you, because, I was connected by someone that met someone that, knew my journey. So I think finding a community and serve that community is one of the most important things. Things will naturally happen for you if you have that passion and if you have that desire of serving people.
Looking at things through, I'm an entrepreneur, so looking at things through an entrepreneurial lens, the biggest thing is to be patient and fight for your vision. You can create a plan. I like to say you're in another industry and this is the industry you're passionate about, work your 9 to 5, be patient, wait for your moment. And then, you come home from work and you might have to put in a 5 to 9. I have my really amazing friend, Chelsea's, she's building out her own advertising agency, but she's working a corporate job in marketing right now. And it's so powerful to watch her grow her brand. She's doing it on the side. It's like her little side hustle. So from an entrepreneurial standpoint, I would really just encourage entrepreneurs to believe your vision. Sometimes you're going to bring it. I mean, I get no all the time, and it took me a long time to really find, like Maria said, your community of people who believe in what you believe in. But this is an always evolving industry. So become a lover of learning. If you don't love to learn, it probably won't be able to work in emerging technology and an industry that's constantly evolving. Read a lot about the industry, educate yourself. There's so many free resources to just really plug yourself into what's happening in the community of gaming and esports. But really determine what you want to do, set your goals, and be confident when you go after them. And if someone doesn't believe in you, move on. Move on. They're not for you, right? Not everybody is going to see things from your own perspective. Not everyone is going to buy in. Not everyone's going to believe in you. But you have to have the courage and the grit and the determination to believe in yourself and to continually push until you do find the community that Maria talked about that has your back, that believes in you, that's going to help you get there and help you make some money in this space as well. You have to monetize eventually.
Yeah, that what Maria and Selena said, that resonate a lot with me as well. So throughout my path, you feel alone. You feel that you don't have advocates. You feel that you are separated from the whole rest of a group, a company, an industry, but trust us, you're not alone. It happens, and it's actually something that it goes a lot in that transformation of at a personal level, and also transformation that we are all advocating here, that it is within your own power to transform organizations and the community at large. So on that note, a piece of advice, more concrete, is get a mentor. Get someone that you have met in the community. I would recommend someone who is not your manager, or it could be as arm's length as possible of your day-to-day environment, because they will bring a fresh perspectives. They could share stories that they experience in other places. And that is kind of like an amazing experience that you can have someone that you can trust, that can help you to coach your career and can share those experiences. Like, get a mentor, or at least a peer to begin with.
All fantastic points. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, it looks like we're coming to the end of our time, and I haven't seen any questions, which is probably a good thing because we're almost out of time. So I want to thank you all so much for all your insights and for your experience, and for those out there who are looking for role models. Well, look, here you have some right here that I would definitely look to. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it back over to the Epiphany folks.
Okay, thank you so much, Kate. Thanks so much, Maria, Veronica, Rebecca, Kate. I think a lot of the points that you guys were talking about, they were resonating with me, and I was like, oh, okay, how do I start chatting in the comments area? Especially, some of the experiences and some of the anecdotes that you guys are sharing from your own personal experience. The gentleman that you mentioned, Kate, the one who only invests in women-led businesses, yay, please connect us. We would love to speak to him. Because I think that's something very important. Again, here I want to highlight, so Revolving Games is run by, two brothers, right? So they're both men, and they really liked what we were trying to do at Epiphany and trying to connect the rest of the world with Pakistan, and they believed in the vision. And they said, okay, we want to support you. And we said, yay, So I think that is so important to find the male allies, and also, like you mentioned, Veronica, to find the champions, mentors who are going to come, who you can come back to, kind of like but the safe space that Maria, you're mentioning, right? That okay, so have your safe space where you can vent as well, and sometimes you're just learning from one another, and you're also learning what not to do, and also sharing information. So how what you just mentioned in the chat, Maria, how now you're at a stage where you just say, I'm going to decide whether.
Yeah, I hope I like them, not the opposite.
Absolutely. It is so true, right? So now it's kind of like it gets to
that changes everything, because you stop pleasing others.
Absolutely. And you're so true to your own self, what you were talking about, Rebecca,
So before I let you guys go, right, so we shouldn't let Kate off the hook. Kate, what is your message?
It's my piece of advice is simple. The American writer Mark Twain once wrote that comparison is the death of joy. And I really encourage people to focus on what you can do well, and just, find that mentor who can help you refine your skills and to go in a path that you feel is best for you. We are all suffering from a certain degree of imposter syndrome, I think, and social media makes it all the worse, because social media does nothing but force us to compare what's going on in our lives and everyone else. So I really encourage you to think about that. Comparison is the death of joy. So don't worry about what other people around you are doing, and if you do happen to find someone who does something that you would like to do, or like, say, if you're an artist and you see someone's work and you're like, that's amazing, I'll never be able to do that. You don't know that, and actually you may have just found a mentor. You can contact them and ask them, like, hey, can you show me how you do that? I'd love to learn. So don't, I think like others have said, you have to be voracious in your desire to learn. And I mean, I'm in my mid 50s and I am curious as hell. I love learning new things. In lockdown, I've learned 4 new languages on Duolingo because, I love to learn. So I encourage you to focus on what you can do well, and just try to stop comparing yourself and your experience with other people.
Mm-hmm. Okay, ladies, you're awfully wise. I have learned a lot from all of you as well. And looking forward to, reconnecting some other time in the future. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.